Hello friends, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Why Jesus. Let's welcome the guest of today's show, Grace from Texas. Hi Grace, welcome to Why Jesus.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Grace, let's start off by getting a little bit of a self-introduction from you.
Well, I just finished high school in June, so that was great. I'm going to college in the fall, and I'm really excited for this new chapter of my life. Fortunately, that means saying goodbye to childhood, but God always has new experiences to show me, and I'm really looking forward to learning.
Nice, you're going to college. What are you trying to pursue?
My end goal is to be a sonographer, which basically means depending on what you specialize in, actually, you analyze the stomach or the heart. If you specialize in ultrasounds, which is what I'm planning to do, you get to look at babies and stuff. So I just love children and just the idea of family, so that's why I'm really excited for.
So what exactly will be your professional title, Grace?
The exact title is going to be Diagnostic Medical Sonographer.
How long is the schooling?
So the bachelor's program itself is 4 years, and for the particular program I'm applying for, I'll be attaining associates first before I actually apply to the bachelor's program, and then afterwards, if God lets me, I want to pursue a master's in CT scanning. So I would be looking at the brain and analyzing it to see if there's any diseases or any problems going on there.
What made you particularly interested in this field?
Well, when I was younger, my mom, she had a car accident, and so when she was pregnant with me, and so at the end, I believe she didn't have any more kids after me. So I kind of, growing up, I felt bad that my family I didn't get to have any other siblings, and just the idea of family and starting a new chapter in your life, just witnessing that itself, it's so amazing to see how God works in mysterious ways.
Now, are you an only child, Grace?
I have an older brother, but that's it. He's about 6 years older than I am.
What does your parents do?
My dad is a pharmacist technician, and my mom is a nurse's aide.
Now you said you were going off to college, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, are you going to be dorming or are you going to go from home?
I'll be commuting, so that means I'll be living at home with my parents, just trying to save money as much as possible for them.
So has your parents given you any restrictions when you're going to go out? Because you're going to be exposed to a whole lot of things out in college.
Definitely, for sure. They are very open with me. As long as I follow the schedule and I'm home after class, there are no restrictions because they trust that the way that they raise me will help me as I attend college.
Now, what is your take on parenting? Do you think parents should be so strict, especially, with Indian parents or Asian parents? They tend to be a little protective of their children. Do you think that does more harm than good, or no, you think it is good?
Obviously, there's some sort of balance that's required. My parents definitely were very strict with me at the beginning, but they definitely loosened up a lot because I'm the youngest child. But as long as you find that balance of, setting the right foundation and the right habits, then that way I feel like the child or children in that case will be all right in the end.
Now, Grace, you mentioned about God in a couple of your responses to my questions. What place does God have in your life?
He has a huge role in my life. I honestly can say I wouldn't be where I am today without his help. People learn and at different paces, and I definitely feel at the slower end, but he's always been there with me, just holding my hand and helping me as I go through every struggle or every joyful occasion.
So how did this whole thing start? Your experience of God, to say if that is what got you started, mm-hmm. or was this something that you were taught by your parents?
It was a mix of both. So back when I was 6 or 7, my parents attended a festival here in Texas, So I first heard the gospel there, and so like every child, I really was excited to hear that I had a Heavenly Father, a friend that I could always go to and talk to. So I said I said the prayer of confession, and so I said it, but it didn't really have any impact on me until I was about middle school when I went to a camp, and it was there that like God really started to open my eyes so that I had a more personal connection with Him.
How would you describe this personal connection?
It's, when I say personal connection, I mean like when you take time to like know a person, you know, generally when you first meet them, you say, you know, hello, how are you? And just try to get to know them and keep the conversation light. But then when you take time to really know the person, then you understand, you know, why that person may act a certain way, or like the reason that they talk a certain way. So when I say like having a personal relationship with God, by going into His Word, I really hear what He has to say and how it's applicable for my life today.
Now, you talk of it as a relationship between you and God. Yeah. Now, every relationship has its ups and downs. Do you ever find yourself in times where you have a down time, or a time where you're not having a good relationship with God?
Definitely. It's a everyday struggle. I was at a wedding recently, and they were saying how like when you're in a relationship with someone, you know, it isn't really meant to be. It's more full of choices. You choose to learn about that person, you choose to love that person over and over again, no matter what the obstacles may be. And so when you're in that place, then you just have to choose to trust and hope that it will all work out for His glory.
So what are the challenges that you experience with this relationship that you have with God?
I would say definitely just finding time. In a busy schedule with mine, it's very hard to like make time to spend with Him, but you know, besides that, you know, just being the one that stands out among the crowd for believing what I do, it's definitely had its hard times. So just choosing to love Him and choosing like to go the opposite path from other people is definitely a hard thing to do.
Grace, you did mention that one of the hardest things for you to living out your relationship with God was that you stand out of the crowd. Now, why do you say that you stand out of the crowd?
I believe that based on reading the Bible and my relationship with Jesus, that you know, there's a certain way to present yourself. The way people look at you, what you wear, how you talk or act around others is very important. So it sets a little bit of a boundary for myself when I'm around others.
Do you have a hard time finding friends?
Definitely, but when I was in high school, God blessed me with a close group of friends. I have 2 really good friends back home in Texas.
Was there any situation or experience in your life where you tried to talk about Jesus or God to someone from your class or school and it didn't really settle well with them?
For me, I didn't have that case. They were more welcoming to it because especially in high school, you're all about like learning new things from others and why people believe what they believe. When I tell someone about Jesus, it's not as if I'm telling them about a religion. I'm talking to them about like a person, like I'm talking to you right now. You know, Jesus is just someone very important in my life that I feel that everyone should get to know.
Now, you are from Texas, right,
Yeah.
Grace?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there any restrictions regarding sharing your faith in schools? Do you go to a public school?
I go to public school, yes. And there aren't any like limitations, but like I'm like a major part in our choir class, so like the songs we sing particularly, we can't really sing any. We sing like Christian songs, but it's more like old hymns that aren't. They don't mention Jesus. It's more like just the general idea of God and how powerful this God is. Nothing too specific to a certain religion.
Now, how do you share your faith in Jesus to others? You said you don't really talk much about religion, so for people who have had a hard time to talk about Jesus or share their faith, how do you go about it?
Definitely. So, as I was saying earlier, like in my choir class, when we had a new director, and so his approach to teaching was really different. And when he introduced a new song, it brought about like different like social topics about like especially like what you believe and how, not how you act, but like just the idea of believing in Christianity or God. So each student, if they were willing, had like the opportunity to talk about like how their faith to like whatever they believe is important to them, and how like when you talk about like Jesus in the class, it's different. You get different reactions from different people, and so sometimes there are people who just like ignore it, like they don't feel too happy about it, but they won't say anything to your face. So you learn, like, you pick up the signs that like they don't want to talk about him and stuff.
They teach about Darwinism and, the scientific thinking of the creation of the world and scientific reasons for everything in the world today. Now, do you ever find that influencing you or, making you question your faith in God?
Not really. I just question like why they teach it in schools, because a lot of the schools, they tend to be very vague, and so when they bring up evolution and Darwinism, it's very like upsetting for me, because if we're not allowed to talk about our faith, then like these other ways of thinking, it doesn't really like settle with me.
Have you done anything for it? Have you been able to like stand up for it or question it in the class, or maybe speak to your professor or teacher who teaches you, or challenge him or friends who believe in it?
I have, but like they normally just say like we're not allowed to talk about this because they're supposed to be guarded, and they don't want to have like a huge scenario where like they have to deal with this. They don't want that kind of attention being brought to their school or facility.
How do you think you could tackle it? You can't help that it's being taught, but what do you think you could do as a person who believes in God to take that effect of what is being taught, and that in your personal belief you know that it's not that way? What do you think could be done? Because all the upcoming generations are going to hear more of it.
Yeah. Well, I believe that actions speak a lot louder than words, and so like I noticed that like whenever you see someone, the way they smile or the way they communicate with you, it really changes someone's day. A big social issue for me like was bullying, and I was bullied in high school, and so like for just being I was called like too sweet and like too nice, and like they were just wondering like why I was like that. They hated that about me, and so because of that, like they didn't understand like where the joy was truly coming from. And so like once I explained it to them and once I confronted them, they were more like respectful of me, but I don't know like what kind of impact I had on them when I was talking about Jesus.
So you said you were bullied, and that's a serious offense.
Yeah.
It could have a personal effect on you psychologically and otherwise. So has your faith, or did your faith help you overcome that phase?
Yes, definitely. When I was in that dark period of my life, I felt that there was no one. Like, I have a huge family on my mom's side, and I don't know that many people on my dad's side. They're so far away in India, and all my cousins are here in New York. But it just feels that like the distance didn't like cover me or like comfort me in any way. I just felt like alone at home, and so because of that, I didn't know like where to turn. And so when I was at the camp, they were explaining how Jesus is everywhere. He is always with you no matter what. He sees me in my darkest moments and my brightest moments. And so because of that, I was able to trust him, and I'm hopeful for like a better tomorrow always.
It's a tough thing to do, but you survived it and you're telling about it today to me, and you sound fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to know, Grace. Grace, now you have said that you have a deep relationship with God, Jesus. Now, what would you say for people who don't know about Jesus? What is the greatest attribute of Jesus that would draw a person, or what is the greatest character of Jesus that draws him to you?
For me, it's just his love and patience. I know that's two, not one, but I can't think of one without thinking of the other, you know. As a student in high school, you know, you have so many pressures on you to, you know, be the best you can be academically, be the best you can be personality-wise. But, you know, because of Jesus' love for me, I know that I can be myself when I'm around him.
Grace, now you said about the love of Jesus being one of the greatest characters of his that you love. Now, is there any experience in your life that comes to mind when I ask you, how do you experience the love of Jesus? Or what was that in your life that you can say is because of the love of Jesus?
Well, generally, for me, as I transitioned from elementary to middle school and then middle school to high school, my parents have always emphasized college and how you need to look your best. But the amount or like the quantity of times that they have told me about it got extremely overwhelming once I got to high school. Especially like with my brother coming at me, you know, setting like high standards. So because of that, I have to meet them or exceed them. That just felt overwhelming, and it was honestly terrifying to think about, you know, what would my impact be on the world. But, you know, in that transition from middle school to high school, especially in 11th grade, the year where you're applying for colleges and all of that, I could just feel like in the midst of all the yelling and the nagging, just God's voice saying, you know, I'm right here. There's always a shoulder to cry on at night, or now. He was just always there for me, and just knowing that just like made me stop and like take a breath and trust that everything was going to be okay.
Now, is there any part of your faith in God that you are uncomfortable with or you dislike?
I know that like when I've talked about Jesus with other people, they immediately get uncomfortable, if I'm being honest, when I just talk about him, because, you know, you have, if you look, when we were studying in school, like Christianity was one of like the biggest religions in the world, and you have all these people claiming that they're Christian, but then like going back to what I said, the way they dress, the way they talk, it's so different. And so because of that, like that one person, you know, set in stone like what all Christians are like. So it kind of like ruins your chance. So you have to be yourself and remind them that, you know, each person is different, and that their relationship with Jesus really affects them and how they act and how they are with other people.
Grace, has there been an inspirational figure in your life, in your relationship with Jesus?
Definitely, for sure. For me, since I moved when I was younger, I didn't really have the community that I have here in New York with family, so I had to find that on my own. And so there was always sisters in the church that I could talk to, who would take me out for coffees or just frozen yogurt or something, just to talk about, you know, where I am standing with Christ and just how we can pray for each other. There was one instance when I went for coffee with a friend. We saw some like monks going in for coffee, and we were like in the midst of praying, and like other people started like questioning like what were we doing, and so we just took that as an opportunity to share about Christ's love for us.
And how did it work out?
They said they would definitely like look into nearby churches and stuff, so I was really excited to hear that.
What are your interests, Grace? What do you do in your pastime?
Well, my weekends are definitely filled. I help my dad manage the little kids at our church. I'm a singer at our church, so I lead the kids in songs, teaching them new things. And I'm also a Sunday school teacher to a little 13-year-old girl back home. And it's really fun, and it's interesting to try different ways to teach Christ's love and just who he was throughout history, and how people responded and how people acted when they were involved with Christ.
You've got a lot of work on your hands, huh?
Yeah, I do.
Now you said you sing. Yeah. Can you sing us a few lines?
I'm going to be singing a verse from a song called Stuti Jai Maname. I chose this verse particularly because I was introduced to it from a chichi at my youth retreat in Texas. And so when I found out that there was an English version to a Malayalam song, I was kind of surprised. I've always loved singing in different languages because that means that there isn't just one way to glorify God and one way to just sing his praises. There's multiple. Stuti Jai Maname Nityavam Nen Jivanadhen Yeshuve Idu por Swajivan Tanoraltma Snehiden Verarini Idu por Swajivan Tanoraltma Snehiden Verarini. Sing praise forever to the Father, King of glory, Lord of life. He who gave his life to rescue me from death into this glorious life. He who gave his life to rescue me from death into this glorious life.
Grace, that was very nice.
Thank you.
Grace, where do you see yourself in the future?
Hopefully, if it's God's will, I plan on becoming a stenographer. And before I pursue my master's, I want to definitely go on a mission trip to India. And when I come back after I've received my master's, I hope to have a family, especially like an open home. I didn't receive that a lot as a kid, so I wanted to make sure that anyone who comes into my home feels very welcome and just feels, you know, God's presence, Jesus' presence in my home. Very
interesting. Now, Grace, if there was something that you could change in the world today, what would that be?
From my personal experience, I would honestly want to address bullying and people who are depressed, because they shouldn't be, and it's definitely a struggle to deal with that every single day.
How do you think you could make a difference?
So for my personal ministry, I want to definitely have an outreach program for like children, maybe involving like foster care systems or adoption agencies, to where that they have like a more programs offered for like a big brother or big sister program or initiative in the agency.
Now, from all the experiences that you've had so far in your young life, what would you be able to tell the youngsters of today to make their life more fruitful, more happy?
I honestly would say that, you know, living life here is just very difficult. Every day you have your own struggles. Nobody understands your problems like you do, but, you know, there's always Jesus. He's always there. Choosing him over and over again will make your life different in so many ways. It'll turn your life around.
Thank you so much, Grace, for coming on our show, Why Jesus. I wish you the best of luck for all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks, for joining us on another episode of Why Jesus. Stay tuned for our next show, same time, same place next week.